Hi, I'm Larry Gifford. I have Parkinson's disease. This is a special Parkinson's Awareness Month episode of When Life Gives You Parkinson's. We're officially award-winning podcast When Life Gives You Parkinson's. Oh yeah! Honored as Best Podcast by the RTDNA Canada West Region. We now face off with two other podcasts, both produced by the CBC, Canada's NPR, or BBC. So we are going for Best Podcast in Canada, so wish us luck. Each Wednesday in April, we will be releasing an episode featuring new interviews and never-before-heard bits of interviews that I've collected over the past 2 seasons, from people with Parkinson's and their advocacy to the leaders of the Parkinson's organizations around the world that we're counting on to support us in our journey and to help drive research for new treatment options. Today, we're going to hear from 3 people. Helen Matthews, Deputy CEO of the Cure Parkinson's Trust, Steve Ford, the Chief Executive of Parkinson's UK, and Sohini Chowdhury, the Deputy CEO of the Michael J. Fox Foundation. 3 people and 3 organizations making a huge impact in the world of Parkinson's. These are the keepers of hope, the difference makers, the believers. They know that you can lead a great life today with Parkinson's, and that tomorrow, no matter how far in the future that may be, we can all live lives without Parkinson's. I talked with Helen Matthews, the Deputy CEO of the Cure Parkinson's Trust, back in February before COVID-19 had taken over our lives. The first thing I did was thank Helen. Personally, the more that I learn about Cure Parkinson's Trust, the more I appreciate what they do for people with Parkinson's like me.
Well, Larry, do know that our objective is to try and find a cure. And for us, that means looking at absolutely every avenue of research that we can and move as many forward that are as promising as possible in parallel. So it means that we are a very, very small team here, but we are absolutely committed to finding a cure. And I think because we were set up by people with Parkinson's, for us, that is a very important torch to carry.
The Cure Parkinson's Trust, CPT, is 15 years old in 2020, co-founded by the late great Parkinson's advocate Tom Isaacs.
I've done all I can to find this cure. We've created a different feeling, a different culture, a different mood about Parkinson's, and that's actually what I'm most proud about. And seems a shame that I'm the one who is lost out on this, but hopefully the legacy will but hopefully I will have left something good, and hopefully out of my demise might come something that might be more powerful than if I live through it.
Tom Isaacs died in May of 2017. Those words are his from a film by BBC documentary producer Jemima Harrison of The Passionate Productions entitled Tom in His Own Words, which focuses on Tom's extraordinary legacy. Helen was at his side and there from the beginning of the Cure Parkinson's Trust and a little bit before.
CPT came into being in 2005, and for us, it was a matter of we wanted to make sure that all avenues of research could move forward, because as the GDNF trials had been halted, so similarly, Big Pharma was starting to leave the area of the arena of Parkinson's. And with that, the onward investment to actually make treatments a real thing for people. It's all very well having academic research that moves things forward, but unless you have got a partner that can actually manufacture and deliver and take things forward to clinics, you've reached another blockade. So for us, it was making sure that we could really help support the effort, the fantastic work that the Michael J. Fox Foundation were doing in the US, but try and build a similar effort to support the research that was going on in Europe and in the US. So support the best research wherever we could find it.
Sure.
And I have to say, when we came into being, the charity was set up by 4 individuals with Parkinson's. I'd been involved since 2002, but our vision was pretty clear. Let's try and find as many different routes as we can to find treatments that are going to slow down the disease, stop it, or reverse it. Also, we make sure that all areas of research move forward in parallel, so that we do try and explore the small molecules, that we do try and explore the gene therapy, that we do make sure that we're really focusing on the repurposing that we do so much of here at CPT in terms of, cough-linctuses and diabetes treatments and high cholesterol treatments, making sure that we're moving everything forward because we know that Parkinson's is a syndrome, not one disease. We have got to identify treatments for all sorts of Parkinson's.
The name Cure Parkinson's Trust, is it too audacious?
I think you have to hold on to your aspirations, don't you, Larry? I really do.
Yeah. Gotta have hope.
I have to believe very, very strongly in Tom's vision. Tom believed that a cure for Parkinson's was possible and is possible, and I believe it too. And I have to say I'm incredibly encouraged by the work that's been going on here, particularly within our repurposing program, our linked clinical trials in terms of exenatide, in terms of ambroxol, and then there are a whole pipeline of other drugs that are coming through as well, making sure we move all of those forward so that we're not completely reliant on a surgical route is massively important. Surgery is not right for everybody, and we have to hold on to that.
How is the trust defining the word cure these days?
Well, for me personally, I still follow Tom's definition of that, is that cure means different things to different people at different stages of the disease. If you're newly diagnosed, you don't ever want to have had that diagnosis. If you've been living with Parkinson's for 10, 12, 15 years, you don't want anybody else to ever get that diagnosis, but you are in a different mindset and perhaps more ready to take part in research in a philanthropic way, because your involvement will make a difference for future generations with Parkinson's as well as to yourself.
And how much closer to a cure are we today than when Tom founded the trust?
I think if I had Richard Wise around the table opposite me, he would be going, I want to answer that one. I want to answer that one. I think we're an awful lot closer, definitely in terms of having treatments that will slow down the progression. And that is a massive step forward, which means that, the stem cell work, growth factor work, other work can be carrying on in parallel that might be a little bit slower to come all the way through to clinic. But there are things that are coming very, very soon that we hope will actually slow down the progression of Parkinson's.
The Cure Parkinson's Trust is a big supporter of the GDNF trials, also known as the Bristol trials. I initially talked to Helen for an episode about GDNF, which was released on March 18th, 2020, called This Might Be the Closest Thing to a Cure. There's a lot of specific information around GDNF in that episode. We dive into it a little bit here, but it's a more general discussion around the outcomes of scientific studies and are we measuring the right things? So in the Bristol trial, the phase 2 trial, it failed to meet its primary point, but the trust almost immediately pointed to the brain imaging and said, wait a minute, there's something else going on here. What was going on?
Well, and I think that's the thing that's really interesting is that we could clearly see that there was some form of biological engagement here. And I think that's what's given us a sense that there is more research that needs to happen. And Larry, I think when the initial results came out, it was hugely disappointing. But again, it's trying to understand why. What is the disconnect? And taking the time to get that right and move forward in the right way is a really, really important thing. It's very easy to rush forward and not necessarily take on board the considerations or the new developments and make sure that whatever the next step is as strong as it can possibly be. And it's really, really encouraging to see that CDNF, that's been moving forward in parallel and has had really encouraging results in terms of it's got safety and tolerability data that is available, and the full data will be available later on this year. So, and that's been a trial that's been supported by Herantis Pharma, but it's using the same delivery device that was used in Bristol. But in parallel, also, the gene therapy trials are coming back. And actually, that is a really important step because the current infusion route that's been used in the Bristol trial of needing to go for an infusion once a month is very, very onerous for people, and it won't necessarily be the right thing for everybody. So it's really important that when you're looking at an area of research, you open up as many doors as you possibly can within that field so that you can try and support, hopefully, a small molecule that would be a pill eventually, or a subcutaneous injection that would be so much easier and much more feasible for people to be able to take and to administer than needing to go through brain surgery and monthly infusions.
Are there other outcome measurements that indicated GDNF still had merit?
So the outcomes in Parkinson's research, and particularly in clinical trials, are a really important area, and there's a lot that's going on here as well. And again, it might not be immediately apparent that there's a lot of work that's going on in this, but there really is. I think we have all felt for a very long time, not only those who are funding research, but also those who are taking part in research, and also those who are carrying out the research, that we're missing a trick here. Clinical trials don't just happen when people come into clinic. There is that 24/7 when people are at home living with a condition and taking part in a clinical trial where data could be collected. And thankfully, the technology is now catching up with this rather important idea that we needed to be measuring in a different way. And we are working very, very hard with a number of groups to try and identify ways that Parkinson's can be measured effectively at home. Now, it's very easy to put on a device and assume that you're measuring Parkinson's. The critical thing is to make sure that the algorithms that are used to overlay the data that's collected are actually measuring Parkinson's. There's a most fantastic researcher in Kiel in Germany called Walter Meitzler, and his vision for creating algorithms is to work with a clinician, an individual with Parkinson's, and with an algorithm developer. And so everybody agrees that what you're measuring is Parkinson's rather than being movement.
Wow. Okay. That's cool.
It's really important. And there's a wonderful project that's also just starting to get underway in Bristol, again, very much being led by the team who were leading GDNF, to try and, let me take it back a step. There's a smart house in Bristol, a house that's filled with sensors. And what they are going to be doing is inviting some selected participants to come into the house and then wear additional sensors on top of that to be able to put somebody's movement and their daily activities within the context of a home environment. Now, that is really massively important, because if you know that somebody is preparing a meal, you would expect to see certain patterns of movement, and being able to correlate somebody's patterns of movement with Parkinson's with somebody who doesn't have Parkinson's and compare the two suddenly becomes incredibly powerful. So you're getting a very accurate picture of what somebody's doing and what that pattern of Parkinson's is looking like at that moment. Now, the plan for this is that this will be a pilot study, and we will be inviting people to come into the house and to live in the house for a while so that we can actually collect that data. And then actually develop the really accurate map of what we're looking at. But that will then inform developing sensors that can be used at home, which then means that we've got that 24/7 measurement system.
Well, I think that's really important, Helen, because you talk about Parkinson's versus movement. It's not just a movement disorder. And if you had watched me and my wife at home cooking dinner, I'm a lot different at the end of a long day where I'm trying to be on at work, and then I come home and I let my guard down and I forget to season the chicken when I'm cooking. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's different.
Exactly. It's really, really important that, people are living. People have got things they've got to do. They've got to walk the dog. They've got to put in a load of washing. They've got to do the normal routine that we all do. But actually, understanding how Parkinson's is impacting or not an individual, and particularly when they're going through a clinical trial, that is massively important information to collect. And I think the other thing that I feel really passionately about is making sure that we learn from those who are living with Parkinson's through the clinical trial experience. I think we have an opportunity to really talk to the loved ones, the family members, the partners, the spouses who are living with people who are going through a clinical trial. They go through it too, but actually their observations are massively important.
And this is a change in the way that research has been done traditionally, where the patient and the caregivers weren't really involved in creating the trials or even considered beyond just measuring movement.
I think that's right. I think, the era of people taking part in a clinical trial and being a subject is very different to being a participant in a clinical trial. And the language is really important, actually, because you are a participant, you're contributing on every level. And, it's a long process and it's an important process. And to take part in a clinical trial takes a great deal of commitment. It takes a great deal of thought. It takes a great deal of effort. And that effort, we will never find new treatments unless people are fantastic enough to put themselves forward and to take part, but to know that they are part of something very important.
Yeah, I actually had a question. How important is the patient voice in research and trials today?
I think that this is something that's growing in importance, Larry. I think it's something that Tom always championed. Absolutely, he did. That's why we have the Tom Isaacs Award, which is to celebrate a researcher who really embraces patient involvement in their work, and actually really listens and takes inspiration from people living with the condition, because that is vital, absolutely vital. It changes everything. I think researchers understand whether a project's doable or not for the first time when they actually start to talk to the individuals who might take part. It's much, much more than that, though. It's understanding if the research idea is relevant in the first place.
Yeah, and you talk about the change in the environment of inclusion of patients and how the research is changing, and I think the GDNFers that are really passionate, that are still very vocal and raising money for the research. I mean, these people are changing the way science is done. At least they're at least partway responsible for it. And I know you and the Parkinson's UK group are working with them now on whatever's next for GDNF. And do you have a vision for how that's going to roll out?
I think it's still a little bit early to say, Larry. I think, there are a number of moving parts. I think I'm really encouraged by the work that's going on with the outcomes. I think that's a critical matter. I think I'm really encouraged by, particularly the results that have been going around with the BT13 results that Parkinson's UK had last week, and the Herantis findings this week. I think, again, it's making sure that we move forward in the right way rather than necessarily rushing ahead and not getting it right.
BT13, I think we need to talk about this, because for me, I read that and I went, whoa, this could be a game changer.
Again, and this is coming back to the small molecule idea that, this is a growth factor. It's how do you get it, if you can get something in without doing surgery, then that's brilliant. But I think, again, growth factors that by their very nature, they are there to stimulate growth. And it's controlling those that is always going to be the question. Yeah,
and BT13 is, has the same neuroprotective effects as GDNF, but will be easier to get past the blood-brain barrier, which is really ideal because then you have less invasive surgeries, right?
Precisely that. Exactly that.
Helen, is there anything else you want to add?
The one thing I would want to say is actually, a cure can't come soon enough. I've been involved with the Cure Parkinson's Trust since its inception, which is 15 years this year. I've seen a real evolution in research, and it is so encouraging to see so much activity going on, and the energy and the enthusiasm and the dedication of people working in research from all fields. And by that I mean participants, I mean people who are guiding research from a participant perspective. So there are fantastic Parkinson's advocates who do exactly that and do a phenomenal job, an absolutely phenomenal job. I'm constantly in awe of them. To people who are prepared to fund this work, and that's high risk as well. And then the dedicated researchers who are carrying it out. And quite often, researchers are doing this on top of the day job. They are not remunerated to the extent to which the research needs it. And actually, for there to be a game changer, Parkinson's needs to be a global health priority, recognised by governments globally, who are properly investing in this. We've seen this happen in Australia with an injection of cash into a Parkinson's program. You know, we need further injections of cash here in the UK. We need further injections of cash in Canada. We need consortiums working in all territories, you know, in North America, really investing and making sure that Parkinson's is a health priority.
That's great. Well, you obviously are carrying the torch that Tom lit, and it's amazing. I mean, I marvel at what you guys are doing every day, and very grateful for it.
Well, thank you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk. But do know that we really care passionately about moving things forward. You know, for us, this is about carrying on Tom's torch. It is about keeping Tom's vision alive. A cure is possible, and we will get there.
With Helen on our side, how can we possibly fail? Another great champion of people with Parkinson's and a regular collaborator with Helen and Cure Parkinson's Trust is Parkinson's UK and its chief executive, Steve Ford. Steve and I both chatted in February 2020. He's been with Parkinson's UK since 2005. He is the driving force behind transforming this dynamic organization both strategically and culturally. This year, Parkinson's UK celebrates 50 years in operation. I don't imagine they wish they were here 50 years later.
No, I mean, I think that's a funny word, celebrate. And we had an event this week where I was saying, it is, you know, when you had a vision of volunteers who sat around a kitchen table 50 years ago saying, hey, we've got to do something about Parkinson's, and you know, there was no support and no information and no research going on. I guess those people would say, well, it's great that we've now got 350 nurses in the UK and we're spending £8 million pounds on research and you know, we've got all of these sort of groups that, there's all this information that's out there. Yes, you know, I think there is a lot to celebrate. There's to celebrate the way so much of that has been driven by fantastic, amazing volunteers, leaders from within the Parkinson's community. But yeah, you're right. No one is in the mood to celebrate that. Right. We've still got the same, effectively, we've still got the same drug that was just coming into the clinic 50 years ago. And yeah, that's not good enough.
You say the Parkinson's UK is a charity that exists to find a cure and better treatments for Parkinson's, and we will leave no stone unturned until we reach our goal. How does Parkinson's UK now define the word cure?
Yeah, that's a tough philosophical question, actually, and people look at it in different ways. But I think, you know, we are talking about disease-modifying treatments that can slow, stop, or reverse the progression of Parkinson's. That's what we mean. But at the same time, we do recognize that actually symptomatic treatments are really important as part of that if we can eliminate the consequences of the really kind of challenging symptoms that people face, that is significant. The implications of that are really significant for people. So, you know, I don't think we spent a lot of time really mapping out a precise definition of that would be agreed by everybody.
It's tough,
but that's the kind of sense that we're talking about. You know, really significant treatments that change the trajectory of the condition.
And to your point about symptomatic relief, if we could figure out a way to cure dyskinesia, I think a lot of people would be really happy.
Well, look at the press release on Monday.
Oh, look at you. Like that's a broadcast tease if I've ever heard one. Oh, that next Monday, the organization unveiled exciting research around a potential treatment for dyskinesia. Hello! 50% or so of people with Parkinson's develop dyskinesia or uncontrolled body movements within 5 years of beginning to take levodopa. That's the gold standard treatment for this lovely disease, which itself is 50 years old. Steve and I continued our chat talking about the organization's unique proposition.
Well, I think that the one thing which really kind of perhaps differentiates Parkinson's UK from lots of other organizations is that, you know, research is really important, but so is that kind of day-to-day support for people. And, you know, that we invest more than we do in research in making sure that people feel supported to live well with the condition, making sure that people have got the information that they need, that they've got the advocacy they need, they've got people to fight to ensure they can access the right financial benefits and all of that. And I think people often say to me, are you trying to do too much? Should you focus on one or the other? My sense here, though, is that our research programs are better because of that kind of involvement of the community and really understanding what the kind of priorities of people are. The fact that when we do look to recruit to clinical trials, we've got these networks of people, we've got communities out there who can be engaged in all of this and get involved in signing up to clinical trials and shaping clinical trials and all of that. So I think it's a really powerful model. Last week, a bizarre experience where I'm on the phone talking to someone about a dance group that she's trying to set up in a church hall in a village in Essex, and putting the phone down and talking to a chief exec of a pharmaceutical company in the States about about the latest kind of research program. And is that, are we stretching ourselves too thinly, or actually is there something quite powerful about that when you are talking to the global pharmaceutical chief exec, you're bringing that kind of community and the voice of the community,
the humanity
that's really kind of rooted in local church halls.
Yeah, you talk about the pharmaceutical companies, and I think it's important that they understand the impact that they have. Whether it's Pfizer pulling out, or whether it's Cinemet going on halt for a while, and the impacts that has when you can't have those brand name drugs and you have to depend on the generics that don't work for everybody. I don't know that they always understand the impact they have on the Parkinson's community, because it's a business to them. So I think it's important that you have that perspective for them.
Yeah, I think so. And I remember when one of the drug companies, I can't remember the detail now, but they had kind of supply problems, and we activated our networks, and the medical director of that pharmaceutical company got, I think he told me it was 450 emails on a Saturday and Sunday about that situation. And that's really powerful, I think, when we can kind of mobilize people in that way. He hasn't forgotten that. He told me about it when he bumped into me a few years later. And that's good. That's a great model, I think, of the community coming together to really drive change.
I see around the world, the different organizations are collaborating more and more. Are you feeling that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really important that we do that. And I mean, a good example, and I think one of the issues that the GDNF trial highlights is actually the flawed methodology that we have around clinical trials. Clinical trials fail. Is it because the drugs fail, or is it because our trials are not fit for purpose? So one of the things that we've done is to set up this initiative called the Critical Path for Parkinson's. So we've brought together foundations from around the world. The Fox Foundation, the Parkinson's Foundation are involved in this. 10 or 11 global pharmaceutical companies are involved as well. We've got an organization, the Critical Path Institute, based in Arizona, who are doing the work around all of this. And what this is doing is bringing everybody together, sharing data, drug company data, clinical trial data, the kind of data that researchers all around the world have following patients up over a number of years, putting that together and designing tools that can be used to shape the future of clinical trials and to work with the regulators to get that kind of approved. So individual companies don't have to go and get their own kind of trial design approved by the regulator and spend millions of dollars doing that. We can do that kind of once and for all on behalf of the whole industry. And in doing that, I think really facilitate the ongoing drug development in Parkinson's.
The Parkinson's Foundation is a collaborator with a virtual biotech project you guys announced last fall. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, yes, I know. You've been talking a lot about the urgency within the the kind of community and the importance of the voice of people with Parkinson's. And I guess for us, like a lot of medical research charities, certainly in the UK and I think kind of globally, the model has been, let's fund good quality academic research. And as long as they come up with great insights and discoveries, the system will pick that up and turn that into drugs that people will see in clinic. And I think it was a kind of recognition that that's not happening in Parkinson's. The science is really exciting and academics are coming up with really interesting insights, but the biotech industry, the pharmaceutical industry is becoming more risk averse when it comes to Parkinson's. So there's a gap emerging, really promising university discoveries that are not being picked up by industry. So we thought that's an area that we could start to fill, that we can bring in new skills into the charity. So I brought in a new research director, Arthur Roach, and he's recruited a team of people who've all got industry experience. And what we'll do is we'll pick a number of projects that we can de-risk, if you like, we can invest in for perhaps 3 or 4 years, take them to the next stage, and then present them to pharmaceutical companies, having done some of that kind of heavy lifting, and make it easier for them to pick it up and take it on to the next stage. So we've got something like 7 projects now in our portfolio, and just really excited. I think this is a new way of doing things. We've got some interesting news coming out in a press release on Monday around one of the products in that portfolio, which is just getting a step closer to being a new treatment. So, I think we talk about collaboration. I think it is foundations working together to find these new ways of developing drugs. And so it's great that the Parkinson's Foundation have been involved in working with us in this way, and we hope that will be a collaboration that develops over time.
That's great. I like that. I read about that and I was like, hey, that's exciting. It's it's thinking into the future. It's activating the science that's being done, and it's helping ultimately the patient, which is great.
Yeah, and it's attractive actually to a lot of our supporters who I think perhaps some of the more business-minded supporters that we have, who perhaps don't always see the value of just putting money into university research. But here they feel that they're supporting us to invest in projects, and they've got really clear milestones, and they're being delivered in a very business-like way. If they're not succeeding, we'll turn the tap off very, very quickly. We're not investing in bricks and mortar. We're using small, lean companies just focused on individual kind of projects. And it's just a very fast-moving, dynamic way of spinning lots of plates. But I'm probably struggling with my metaphors now. But ensuring that one of those plates keeps on spinning, and it's the plate that we need in the end to deliver the new treatment.
Do you think that your enthusiasm and your sense of urgency relates to the fact that you're a cancer survivor and you know what research can ultimately do?
No, I don't think that is true, actually. I think that, I suppose, yeah. I mean, I do remember reflecting, when I was diagnosed with early prostate cancer, that, wasn't it amazing that could be picked up early? Someone could say, we know what to do about it, and you could go and have surgery, and, effectively, I'm cured of prostate cancer. Of course, I guess some people would say that's never the case, and you still have to be monitored and all of that. But that's really powerful, isn't it? And I guess that's a vision for what it could be like in Parkinson's. That challenge of how do we identify it early, at the prodromal, pre-symptomatic stage, and how do we develop those new treatments that could stop Parkinson's in its tracks? That's the kind of holy grail, I guess, that we're looking for. And it is frustrating that in cancer there is so much more investment that's being made, and we need to ensure that it's now Parkinson's, it's neurodegeneration's turn, I think, to benefit from that investment.
Well, thank you for your time and for all you're doing for the Parkinson's community. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thanks for what you're doing too. We really are a global community. And I think podcasts like this just bring that to life, actually.
Both Steve and Helen mentioned collaborating with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Full disclosure, I am on the Michael J. Fox Foundation Patient Council. I host the Parkinson's IQ+U events across the United States. Our final chat today on this podcast takes place in Southern California, where I met up with Sohini Chowdhury during a PDIQ event in Anaheim. Sohini is the Deputy CEO of MJFF, Michael J. Fox Foundation.
All right.
While Cure Parkinson's Trust marks 15 years and Parkinson's UK marks 50 years, the Fox Foundation also hits a milestone in 2020.
It is. It's a little bit crazy to think that we've been around for 20 years.
Well, I don't think anybody anticipated being around that long.
No, it's sort of a bittersweet sort of celebration in that I think we really expected and hoped that our doors would close before 20 years because we would meet our goal. And obviously, we've made a lot of strides. There are a lot of new therapies that have now made their way into patients' hands, and that's fantastic. And a lot of that has been supported by the Fox Foundation. But unfortunately, a lot still remains to be done. And so I think we're approaching these 20 years sort of as a let's celebrate what we've accomplished, but by no means does that mean that we need to stop working. In fact, we need to push even harder because we've seen that we can have an impact, and we just need to accelerate that and work even harder to do what we need to do.
It feels like, from my perspective, in talking to a bunch of different organizations through the podcast, that there's more of an open sense of collaboration amongst the organizations. Do you feel that?
Absolutely. I think we all have a shared mission in trying to do our utmost to support the community. And that support can come in a lot of different ways. And none of it is competitive because we each sort of have a different approach that we take, but together it provides a holistic platform to engage with and support the community.
Does that speed up the progress?
I think so. I think when you have groups that are specializing in, care centers and trying to make sure that the care centers are the best possible, or you have groups that are focused on advocacy, or you have groups focused on research, etc. It just allows the best to be done in those areas, and it sort of creates this symbiotic ecosystem where, again, where we have our respective expertise, we're kind of pushing those areas and we're making sure that it benefits the community as a whole.
Which of the research projects that are underway that you're aware of most excite you?
I'm really excited about a lot of the synuclein studies that are going on, partly because the scientific rationale is so strong. We know that alpha-synuclein, this protein that exists in all of us, but for some reason it clumps with Parkinson's patients, we know that it's the hallmark of the disease. And so the fact that we actually have a number of different therapies in clinical testing that are looking to target alpha-synuclein is incredibly exciting because it really gets to this root biological process that we know is part of the disease.
Right, and so from my understanding, it's kind of like what we're seeing after the forest fire has burned is we're like, hey, there's alpha-synuclein there. We just don't know how it got there or why it's there or what it did.
Exactly. We know that it's there. Did it cause the fire? Is it a consequence of the fire? Is it sort of maybe it's totally irrelevant to the fire and there are two processes going on. We don't know. But what we do know is that when you do an autopsy on the brains of individuals who have had Parkinson's, we know that they have Lewy bodies, these clumping, what we call the clumping of alpha-synuclein. We know they have these clumps in their brains. And so the theory is, let's go after these clumps because they exist and they don't exist in the brains of individuals who don't have Parkinson's disease.
$1 billion. It's quite a hallmark over 20 years of raising money for research, and yet we still don't have a cure, or we still don't know what causes Parkinson's. And it sounds like a lot of money, but compared to other diseases, it's really not. So how do we continue to build the urgency for Parkinson's? Yeah,
$1 billion is a mind-blowing number, and I think it's important to put that number to think about it in the right way. When you think about drug development in general, the numbers that are often cited are that it takes anywhere between 12 and 15 years to get a drug moving through the development process and into patients' hands, and that it can cost upwards of $1 billion, that entire process. So when you think about over 20 years that we've been able to, through the unbelievable generous commitment of the Parkinson's community, that we've been able to raise $1 billion, it's extraordinary. But it also sort of puts it in perspective that it's not really that much, unfortunately, and this sounds terrible to say, it's not that much when you think about drug development and the costs of it. But I think what we've learned in these 20 years is how to be really smart about the money that we've raised. And we've been able to do enormous things with that money, everywhere from supporting a lot of these improved symptomatic treatments that are now on the market for patients, to really supporting a lot of these novel approaches that are looking to really slow or halt the disease progression, which is really getting at that goal of ours of a cure. So I think that $1 billion is a lot. I wish that we did not have to be here at 20 years saying we've raised $1 billion. I wish we could say we've, in 20 years cured it. But I think we're really smart about the way we raise our money, and we now know how to get the biggest bang out of every buck that we raise.
And how important are the relationships with the pharmaceutical companies? I mean, you have Acadia Pharmaceutical here today sponsoring the Parkinson's IQ plus U event. What role do they play in the Michael J. Fox Foundation?
Pharmaceutical companies are a really important player in drug development. And the way that we see it is that if you really want to be smart about getting therapies into patient hands, you have to work with everyone who's part of that process. And the biopharma sector is an important player. And so the way that we see it is we want to understand, how do we get them to stay committed to Parkinson's research, because it's a very complex disease. There are a lot of risks associated with investing in Parkinson's. So how do we get them to invest in Parkinson's, stay invested in Parkinson's, and increase their investment in Parkinson's? And one of the ways we do that are through events like this, where we sort of highlight the research that's going on. We sort of make sure that the Parkinson's community has this front row seat to understanding what is happening in the Parkinson's disease research and care ecosystem. And having these companies here to be able to speak with participants directly and be able to share that information, so that every person who attends these events walks away with that knowledge to make whatever decision he or she may want to make with respect to their care, or whatever action items calls to action they may want to take. That's really important.
Why do you think there's such an adversarial relationship between big pharma and the patients?
Well, I think rightfully so. Patients wonder, why does it take so long? Are they really pushing as hard and fast as they could? Are they really thinking about how I can get access to these drugs? And I think that I think sometimes biopharma have not been the smartest about how they've communicated things. I think they're learning, and we've seen improvements over the decades. But I think that there's still a deep, perhaps, it's a little complex, I think, that perhaps not everyone understands what goes on into drug development efforts, on one hand, from the patient community, and may not fully understand why it actually does take so long, and why safety matters so much, and how that can take a long time in terms of testing it and making sure that it's doing what it says it does, and it doesn't have any unintended consequences. And from the biopharma side, I think that perhaps they have not realized until lately that patients are partners in this process, and they should be treated as such, and they should have that same amount of information and knowledge. And so I think we're moving in the right direction, but perhaps it could happen faster. And I think that's one of the things we're trying to do, is make sure that we can get those communication streams going, so that each side fully understands the interests and the objectives of the other, and that there's full transparency about what's going on.
Yeah, you're really a bridge between the patient and the pharmaceutical companies, and you're helping to drive that process faster and cleaner and safer.
That's what we're hoping to do, and I think that we've seen a lot of success in that area. I think we still have a ways to go, but certainly I think that's something that we feel is an important thing to happen, and we're really willing to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sohini Chowdhury, the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Steve Ford, Parkinson's UK. Helen Matthews, Cure Parkinson's Trust. Keepers of Hope. Difference makers, believers. Be inspired. This is the award-winning podcast When Life Gives You Parkinson's, a Curious Cast podcast written and produced by me, Larry Gifford. Our story editor is Dila Velazquez and sound design by Rob Johnson. We also want to hear from you. You're not calling. I don't know what's wrong. You don't like me? You can record a voice message for us at speakpipe.com/When Life Gives You Parkinson's. Go ahead, speakpipe.com/When Life Gives You Parkinson's. It's not going to bite you. Just call and say hello. I miss you. I haven't seen a human being in a long time. With her soon. One of the programs Parkinson Canada offers is a confidential information and referral line. And so if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to info@parkinson.ca or call toll-free 1-800-565-3000. Parkinson Canada colleagues are there for you. They're great listeners and can answer questions on a huge range of topics. So my thanks to Sohini Chowdhury of the Michael J. Fox Foundation, Steve Ford, Parkinson's UK, and Helen Matthews of the Cure Parkinson's Trust, and to you for listening. Thank you. Some of you are listening while you work out. I couldn't listen to me and work out at the same time, I gotta be honest with you, but I'm glad it works for you. I also want to offer special thanks to our promotional partners, Spotlight YOPD. Gaynor Edwards is doing terrific work. This is the only organization in the world with a singular focus of raising awareness of young onset Parkinson's disease. You can find them at spotlightyopd.org. And in the U.S., Parkinson's IQ Plus U, this is a free series of events from the Michael J. Fox Foundation to educate and empower people with Parkinson's and their partners. Some of these events have been postponed due to COVID-19, but we're creating some online free events. So go to michaeljfox.org/PDIQ to find out what's going on and to watch for rescheduled dates. Interested in learning more about Parkinson's and connecting to the community? I encourage you to save the date for the 6th World Parkinson Congress. You'll probably meet Sohini and Helen and Steve. They'll probably be there. It's June 7th to 10th in Barcelona, Spain. In 2022. By then, we should be able to travel again. It's the only totally inclusive scientific conference that opens its doors to people with Parkinson's and families. We'll be there. Me, Rebecca, Henry, all of our friends. Come on, come join us. Learn more at WPC2022.org. Can you tell I'm getting a little slap happy being at home so much? I miss people. I want to thank you for listening. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, or wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're there, give the show a 5-star rating. Come on, just do it already. We've gotten some great comments recently. Thank you for putting comments down. Be sure to put your comments down about why you recommend listening to this pod. You can also engage us on social media. It's at Parkinson's Pod at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Email me at parkinsonspod@curiouscast.ca. And if you want to Zoom, I'm doing a Tuesday Zoom. And we get like 5 or 6 people, random people from around the world. If you're interested, it's at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Just email me or reach out on social media and say I'd like to be involved, and we'll schedule you in one week because we rotate people through. So we're Zooming on Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific time. All right, keep positive, keep exercising, keep listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Canada may be known for its landscapes and friendly people, but beneath the surface lies a darker side of crime, history, and the paranormal. Since 2017, the award-winning Dark Poutine podcast has explored the shadowy corners of the Great White North and beyond, delivering chilling tales from a uniquely Canadian perspective. Hosted by Mike Brown and Matthew Stockton with over 300 episodes and fresh releases every Monday, Dark Poutine is your weekly ticket to the creepier side of Canada. Listen to Dark Poutine on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts.